There is a science to love, a pattern, one that is not random but deeply wired into the very essence of who we are. Men, like all human beings, are not simply falling in love. They are stepping into an emotional transformation, a rewiring of the brain and heart that shifts them from desire to devotion, from attraction to deep connection. It begins with chemistry, not just metaphorically but literally. When a man meets someone who ignites a deep attraction, his brain floods with dopamine, norepinephrine, and oxytocin, creating an intoxicating high. This is why love, in its early stages, feels exhilarating, like a gravitational pull that he can't resist. But this is just the beginning. Beyond attraction, something more profound happens: emotional imprinting. A man doesn't fall for a woman simply because of her appearance or charm. He falls because she leaves an emotional fingerprint on his subconscious. Her presence, her energy, her way of making him feel, these become imprinted within him, shaping his perception of love itself. And here's where the shift occurs. Men do not fall in love with words, they fall in love with presence. When a woman embodies confidence, joy, and authenticity, she creates an energy that pulls him in. Love is not about chasing or convincing, it is about resonance. He is drawn to what he feels in her presence, and that feeling becomes something he seeks, something he returns to. But there is a pivotal transition that determines whether this is a fleeting experience or a lasting one. The moment a man feels emotionally safe, when he no longer operates from desire alone, but from a deeper sense of trust, he shifts. This is when infatuation becomes devotion. A man in love no longer just sees a woman as someone he desires. He sees her as someone he cannot imagine his life without. And this is where vision takes hold. Love for a man deepens when he can mentally project a future with someone, when the image of life together is one of growth, expansion, and possibility. If love feels like a cage, he resists it. But if love feels like the force that propels him forward, he surrenders to it fully. Ultimately, the highest form of love is not just about emotion, it's about evolution. A man falls most deeply when he realizes that love is not about completing him, but about expanding him. The right love does not just bring him happiness, it challenges him to be more, to rise, to become the best version of himself. So, how do men fall in love? They fall in love when love becomes more than a feeling, when it becomes the force that changes everything. Would you like any refinements to match a specific tone or emphasis? The process of falling in love begins with a force so powerful, so immediate, that it almost feels beyond conscious control. When a man meets someone who captivates him, his brain undergoes a profound shift, one driven by a surge of neurotransmitters and hormones designed to draw him in, focus his attention, and create an emotional imprint he cannot ignore. At the center of this transformation is dopamine, the chemical of pleasure and reward. It floods the brain, heightening excitement, sharpening focus, and making every moment with the person feel exhilarating. But dopamine alone isn't enough. The presence of norepinephrine amplifies the experience, intensifying feelings of anticipation, increasing energy, and creating that unmistakable rush, the rapid heartbeat, the quickened breath, the inability to think about anything else. This is why, in the early stages of attraction, everything seems more vivid, time appears to slow down, and even the smallest details, her laughter, the way she moves, the way she looks into his eyes, become etched into memory. Yet, chemistry is not just about excitement, it is also about connection. Oxytocin, often referred to as the bonding hormone, begins to weave its influence the moment physical touch or emotional closeness enters the picture. This chemical deepens trust, enhances feelings of safety, and plants the first seeds of emotional attachment. It is why even the simplest moments, a touch on the arm, a shared smile, a deep conversation, can create a lasting impact. The mind does not distinguish between emotion and chemistry. It experiences them as one. A man is not merely choosing to be drawn to someone. His entire neurological system is guiding him toward her, reinforcing the bond through each interaction. The more positive, exciting, and emotionally charged these moments are, the stronger the imprint becomes. Love at its core is not just a feeling. It is a physiological and psychological transformation that sets the stage for everything that follows. Long before a man consciously realizes he is falling in love, something deeper is happening beneath the surface. His subconscious is forming an imprint. Every interaction, every exchange, and every moment spent with someone begins to leave a mark, creating a unique emotional signature that ties his feelings to that person. Unlike fleeting attraction, which is driven by chemistry alone, emotional imprinting determines whether those initial feelings solidify into something lasting. The subconscious mind is always collecting data, scanning for patterns, and making associations. When a woman consistently evokes emotions that feel safe, exciting, or deeply fulfilling, her presence becomes neurologically linked to those states of being. He doesn't just remember her, he remembers how he feels around her. If she brings joy, warmth, and a sense of belonging, his brain begins to associate her with happiness itself. If she inspires him, makes him feel seen, or triggers a sense of adventure, he starts to crave her presence as a source of meaning and energy. Beyond words and actions, a man absorbs micro-expressions, tone of voice, and the emotional resonance behind every interaction. This is why logic alone cannot dictate love. A man may list qualities he finds attractive, but what ultimately imprints on his heart is how a woman makes him feel in her presence. The strongest imprinting happens when emotion is heightened, during laughter, deep conversations, moments of vulnerability, or shared experiences that feel profound. But just as positive imprinting can forge deep connections, negative imprinting can create distance. If interactions trigger stress, insecurity, or inconsistency, the subconscious begins to associate the person with instability rather than love. This is why attraction alone is not enough. It must be paired with a consistently enriching emotional experience. As time passes, emotional imprinting shapes not only a man's feelings but his very perception of love itself. He does not simply choose to fall. He is drawn in by the emotions that have been woven into his subconscious. And once the imprint is strong enough, love ceases to be a fleeting experience and becomes a part of his internal reality. Love is not built on words alone. It is built on energy, on presence, on the unspoken connection that exists between two people. A man does not just fall in love with what a woman says or does. He falls in love with how he feels in her presence. There is something magnetic about someone who is fully engaged in the moment, someone whose energy is aligned with her actions, whose attention is undivided, and whose authenticity radiates without effort. Presence is the difference between a conversation that is simply heard and one that is truly felt. When a woman is present, she isn't distracted by external noise, overthinking her next words, or performing to fit an expectation. Instead, she is fully immersed in the moment, creating a space where connection can unfold naturally. A man feels this at an instinctual level. He notices when someone truly sees him, not just on a surface level, but in a way that acknowledges his thoughts, his emotions, and his essence. This depth of attention is rare, and because it is rare, it becomes deeply attractive. Beyond words, presence is communicated through body language, eye contact, and the ability to hold space for another without rushing to fill silence. It is in the way she listens, not just to respond, but to understand. It is in the way she carries herself, grounded and confident, unshaken by external validation. When a woman embodies this, a man feels safe to open up, to be vulnerable, to lean into the connection without hesitation. But presence is not just about attention, it is about energy. A person who is fully present emits an unmistakable frequency, an aura that can be felt rather than described. This energy creates a gravitational pull, making her presence something he seeks, something he remembers, something he finds himself returning to without fully understanding why. It is not about trying to be more lovable. It is about being so rooted in oneself that love flows effortlessly. When a man experiences this kind of presence, it changes the way he perceives love. He realizes that connection is not about constantly doing more, proving more, or saying the perfect words. It is about the space that exists between two people, the invisible force that deepens without force, the kind of connection that is felt in silence as much as in conversation. And when he finds this, he is not just falling in love, he is being drawn into something far greater than attraction. He is being drawn into something real. In the beginning, desire is what pulls a man in. It is the spark, the chase, the excitement of something new. But desire alone is not love. It is a fleeting force, powerful yet unstable, driven by chemistry and novelty. If a connection remains in this phase, it is temporary, destined to fade once the thrill subsides. But something transformative happens when a man moves beyond mere attraction, when he no longer sees a woman as someone he wants, but as someone he values, trusts, and ultimately chooses. This is the shift from desire to devotion. Desire is reactive. It is about what feels good in the moment. Devotion, on the other hand, is intentional. It is no longer about the rush of emotions, but about the depth of connection. A man does not become devoted simply because of passion. He becomes devoted when he feels emotionally safe, when he knows that being with this person does not just excite him, but expands him, when he realizes that love is not just a feeling that happens to him, but a choice he is willing to make over and over again. This shift occurs when a man feels that he is seen, not just for what he can provide, but for who he truly is. When he recognizes that love is not about performance, not about keeping up appearances, but about being able to exist in his most unguarded state and still be accepted. He no longer operates from a place of seeking validation. Instead, he finds himself drawn in by a deeper force, one that feels like home rather than a chase. Devotion grows when love is no longer about possession but about presence. It is when a man realizes that being with this person does not limit him but strengthens him, that the connection is not something that drains his energy but something that fuels him. When a woman becomes not just a desire but a partner in his evolution, his commitment is no longer a question, it is a natural progression. The beauty of devotion is that it is not built on fleeting highs. It is steady, unwavering. It does not need constant reassurance because it is rooted in something deeper than attraction. When a man reaches this level, love is no longer about what he can get, it becomes about what he is willing to give. And in that moment, love ceases to be a pursuit and becomes a presence in his life, one that he no longer wishes to live without. Love, in its highest form, is not just about companionship or romance, it is about evolution. A man does not fall most deeply in love with someone who merely excites him. He falls in love with someone who expands him, someone who challenges him to grow, to rise beyond his limitations, to become more than he was before. Love is not meant to be a place of stagnation. It is meant to be a force of transformation, an unfolding of a greater version of oneself through connection with another. In the early stages, love may feel like comfort, like familiarity, like an emotional home. But for love to evolve, it must also challenge. It must push a man to face parts of himself he would rather ignore, to move beyond his fears, his insecurities, his old patterns. The right love does not enable complacency. It calls forth something deeper, something greater. A man may not always realize it at first, but when he meets a woman who ignites this shift, He is drawn to her in a way that transcends logic. She is not just someone he enjoys being with, she is someone who represents a new way of being. This expansion is not about force or control. It does not come from ultimatums or expectations. It happens subtly, through energy, through the presence of someone who embodies growth themselves. When a woman is grounded in her own journey of becoming, she inspires the same in him, not through words, but through example. A man in love with such a woman finds himself wanting to step up, to align with that energy, to become the kind of partner worthy of such a connection. But true expansion in love is not just about personal growth, it is about shared vision. A man falls most deeply when he sees love not as something that limits his freedom, but as something that expands his possibilities. The right relationship does not take away from his ambitions, it amplifies them. It does not confine him, it gives him the space to evolve. When he realizes that love is not an anchor holding him in place, but a force that lifts him higher, he does not resist it, he embraces it. This is when love becomes something more than just emotion. It becomes a purpose, a path, a catalyst for becoming. A man may think he is simply falling in love with a person, but in truth he is falling in love with a version of himself that he is able to become because of her presence in his life. And that kind of love is not just something he wants, it is something he will never let go of. It is not simply an emotion that comes and goes like the tide. Love is a transformation, an evolution, a force that alters a man at his very core. When a man falls in love, he is not just choosing a partner, he is stepping into a new reality. One where attraction turns into connection, connection turns into devotion, and devotion turns into something far greater than himself. It begins with chemistry, a powerful surge of neurotransmitters that flood his system, pulling him towards someone with an almost magnetic force. His mind sharpens, his senses heighten, and the world narrows its focus to the person who ignites something deep within him. But chemistry alone is not enough, because what truly shapes love is not the first spark, it is the imprint that follows. In the opening of the adaptation that follows the toilet scene, which the audience finds disturbing, the first thing that a man does not fall in love with someone simply because she is beautiful or interesting. He falls because she leaves an emotional mark on his subconscious. He falls because of how he feels in her presence, because of the way she resonates in his mind long after she is gone. Love is not logical, it is imprinted through experience, through emotions that become attached to a single person in a way that is unshakable. But the depth of that love depends on something even greater: presence. A man can feel attraction for many, but he falls in love with the one who makes him feel truly seen, the one who is fully engaged, fully immersed, fully present in the moment. The woman who listens not just with her ears, but with her entire being. In her presence, he feels safe to be vulnerable, to lower his walls, to exist without the need to impress or perform. And it is in that space, where he is accepted for who he is rather than what he does, that love begins to take root. Yet love does not remain in the space of desire. It must evolve. The shift from passion to devotion happens when a man no longer sees love as something external, but as something he chooses, something he willingly surrenders to. This happens when trust is built, when consistency replaces uncertainty, when love becomes a sanctuary rather than a pursuit. When a man realizes that love is not about fleeting excitement, but about deep connection, he no longer seeks more, he seeks depth. And when he finds it, he is no longer afraid to give himself fully to it. But the greatest love of all is the one that expands him, the love that does not limit, does not confine, but instead calls him to be more. The right woman does not demand his evolution, she inspires it. She does not push him to grow. Her very presence awakens that desire within him. And when love becomes the force that lifts him higher, that challenges him to become his greatest self, He no longer sees it as something to resist, but as something to surrender to completely. So, how do men fall in love? They fall when chemistry turns into connection, when presence turns into trust, when trust turns into devotion, and when devotion turns into expansion. Love is not just an emotion. It is an evolution, and the moment a man finds the person who makes him want to rise, to grow, to become, he does not just fall in love. He steps into a love that changes everything.